Welcome to Crackling Rosie True Crime. I'm Crackling Rosie. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, giving the video a thumbs up. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for being part of the Crackling Crime crew. Let's get started. Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in. Yes, we are listening to the newly released audio tapes here on Crackling Rosie, and what a find for the SOS world. Might I add that this is true history. This is really groundbreaking and intergalactic for our community. I hope that you are all listening to them, really analyzing them. Maybe some of your questions about the case are being answered. I know some of mine are. So for the person who made these available to us, I personally thank you very much, as well as our small community. Thank you. Today we're going to listen to Nathan Berkowitz's interview. I've already taken a listen. I have my good old-fashioned notes, but I thought it would be really fun. It's not that long of an interview. If we could listen to it together. I know you've probably heard it, or maybe you haven't gotten to it yet. I'm going to listen to the video with you, and I'll stop and go when I have some comments or want to make reference to my notes or something that I might want to share an opinion on. So here we go.
I received a collect phone call from Nat Berkowitz at Boynton Beach, Florida at approximately 12:45. That conversation recording begins at tape counter number 1.
Okay, sorry. First stop. Not call collect. Okay, let's carry on.
From one of David's friends?
David's friend had mentioned your daughter, or Julia's daughter, Diane.
Yeah.
And as a result, that's how I got the name.
Yeah, but I mean all the other information that she was out in California, her date of birth and all that there.
All of that came from, not the date of birth, but the name came from a friend of David's, and the fact that she was in California in a commune.
Oh, all right. Now, let me tell you something. I spoke to her last night, and it's a very ticklish situation. I can tell you this here, and if you want, I'll take the lie detector test to prove that I'm not lying.
I wouldn't question your honesty to start.
All right. She has seen David twice. Once before he was in the Army, in my house. She didn't stay with me. She stayed with her sister's husband. The second time, she came to visit me with her little son, and she met David after the Army. She wrote one letter to David while he was out of the Army, before he was in the Army. She has never corresponded with him or seen him at any time after that. Now,
For those of you who read the Carposi book, remember he mentioned that Diane sent him a letter disapproving of him going into the service. Let's keep going.
the reason I called you.
Right.
She lives in California. She's in a small town. She is not in a commune. She's got a little boy. She is working. If you go around and send a detective, or you send somebody there to investigate her, she'll have to move that there, look for another job, and upset her whole routine there. But she swore to me last night that she never saw or heard from David since those 2 visits to New York.
You see, let me explain to you, Mr. Berkowitz, what I've got you on the phone. The reason that I wanted to speak to you was that we're trying to put this whole thing together. We're trying to see whether there is anything which may clear up the muddied waters which have been muddied by the press, as you know.
Yeah.
We are in no way working with the press, nor are we in any way involved with the police department at this time.
Yeah.
Just hold on.
They were having problems with NYPD, but I don't know if that's a true statement, nor are we working with the police department in any way.
The reason I said stay a minute, there were 2 people in the office and I asked them to step out because I don't even want anyone to hear of our conversation. There are only a very few people in my office. I'm in charge of the investigation. I have 1 other assistant district attorney and 2 of our county detectives working with me. We are in no way working with the New York City Police Department on this case, and we are certainly in no way involved with the press.
All right.
Of course, they're talking with Maury Terry, but anyway.
And what we're trying to do through interviews with David's friends and people involved in the case, we're trying to put together a picture. A lot of things have come up, as you well know, which may indicate that David was either not involved or perhaps was involved with other people who were possibly more culpable than he.
I can understand that. As far as I know.
And let me just say, as I mentioned to your attorney, Mr. Rubenstein, I said, nothing that we do can hurt David.
All right.
What we do, though, may in some way be a benefit to you, or to David, or to both of you.
All right.
And that's why we are trying to put this thing together and put it into perspective.
All right. Now, let me tell you something. You know, they're trying, I mean, according to what I read in the paper, I don't get too much of it here. According to the paper, they feel that there was a cult involved in this. David has never mentioned this to me, and I'm very close to David. He's never mentioned this to me. Whether there is or not, he's never mentioned this to me. You understand?
I understand.
I don't know anything about it. As far as I know, as far as what I know and what I have letters from him, my impression that he did all these himself. You see, all these things himself, because the boy was sick, really sick. I got 7 letters here that if I wanted to sell them, they would be worth a lot of money.
I'm sure they would be.
Yeah, they're a lot of money. Not only from somebody publicity, but people in the psychiatric field would pay a lot of money for that, because those letters are very indication of what he was under. Now, but as far as knowing whether he was hooked up with anybody, I have no idea whatsoever. I have the least idea. He never mentioned it to me. And as far as Diane is concerned, she never had any connection, because we told her not to become involved at any time. But to make sure, I put through a long-distance call to California yesterday, and what I told you is absolutely true.
At this point, I have not sent anyone to see her. Nobody knows other than yourself and the people I'm working with that I have even made any efforts to locate her. I certainly would not wish to disrupt her life, and I'm not trying to interfere in her private life, and certainly not of your grandson either. What we're trying to do is put this thing together and put it into perspective.
And look, that I don't blame you.
In fact,
I don't blame you. The only thing is, you see, down here, I can protect myself because all the people that know me down here realize what I went through, and they don't even talk about it.
Let me ask you this. Have you received any threats of any kind as a result of this?
No, not a single one.
Okay.
Believes there's no cult involvement or never heard of it. Now, let's think that through. I mean, if you were part of a cult, you may not share that with your father, but there may be some indications of the involvement that his father may have picked up on. What he's picking up on is someone who's really messed up and on drugs. And there's, he said, at least 7 letters that steer in that direction, but no cult mention. Again, I don't think it's that peculiar that David would mention or wouldn't mention the cult to his dad. But notice how protective Nat is with his stepdaughter, Diane. And just put yourself in his shoes for a few moments and just think about what this whole ordeal must have been like for him. So, good that he was away in Florida and that he did find a community where they were accepting and not holding this against him.
Let me ask also, would it be possible using you as an intermediary for perhaps an appointment to be made with David so that I could go up and talk to him?
No, that I can't do. Because I know what David...
at the present time, David is writing a lot of letters. In fact, he recently wrote one to a detective sheriff in North Dakota.
Yeah.
And he's constantly writing.
Now, he has plenty of time.
I'm sure. And he says things in his letters and his notes which seem to indicate that there were others involved with him.
There may be, but he never told me.
In fact, if you just hold on a half a second, I'll read you a little note from one of the letters, okay? Just hold on a half a second. Where's that package from, Gardner? Gardner, like you just pulled it out. He wrote a letter to Detective Terry Gardner in Minot, North Dakota. And let me just look. There are a couple of notes in his handwriting because I'm sure you know that we
compared it.
He wrote one note about...
So whatever the technology was then, I'm sure it's come a long way with handwriting analysis, but they did analyze the handwriting in the letters.
A girl named Arliss Perry, who was killed in Santa Clara, California, as part of some sort of a cult rite.
Yeah.
And in his handwriting, he mentions, whatever happened to Arliss Perry, maybe you should look into what happened to Arliss Perry.
So I'm thinking this is one of the big reasons they were hot on seeing what kind of relationship he had with his stepsister, who was also in California. Also, in my opinion, the main goal there also was for Leifer and for the force to be able to use Nat to encourage David to see them. Otherwise, they would have to go through a lot of red tape. So if they were using him or he was encouraging David to speak with them, they might be able to eliminate a lot of that red tape. I think that's one of the main focuses on this conversation.
He also writes on a note, "Sir, all this is just to let you know what you are up against. Forget it. It's a losing battle," and he signs it DB. And in what he's referring to is occultism and an article about cultism and witchcraft, which he photocopied and sent to the detective in North Dakota. And the photocopies are from a paper in Waterloo, Iowa, and another one in the San Francisco Chronicle.
Yeah.
And he's constantly communicating with people with regard to different items.
I know that.
Now, whether or not they're...
Any substance,
I have no idea. But at the present time, He has a list of acceptable visitors.
Yes.
And of course, unless you're on his list of visitors, you can't go to see him.
That's right.
We would very much like to see him.
Well, the only way you can go, I won't do it. If you want to go through Mr. Rubenstein, okay, but I won't do it. I don't want to impose upon any of his privileges now, and he doesn't want to become involved, and I can't do that.
Except you say he doesn't want to become involved, and yet he constantly
writes notes.
Writes notes.
I know that. In fact, he wrote.
He's writing letters to California periodical, Iowa periodical. Burke was running with this.
He wrote to a woman, and she sold letters of his for $450 and $600. They were auctioned off. I know about those letters.
And I can imagine that all of the things that he's doing of this nature are being sold and used to exploit him.
He may be. I don't know. He's an easy mark for other people, for certain people. He's always been that way.
Let me ask you, Mr. Berkowitz, when he came back from the service, was there any very noticeable change in him? That you as his father, someone who's lived with him all his life, something that you would have noticed?
I'll tell you, he was closer to me then than before he went into the Army.
Was there anything in it, any change in him, as something that you might look back now and say, gee,
I suspected at one time that he was taking drugs. That's the only thing I suspected, but otherwise, he was an introvert all his life. And that's why I don't understand these letters, because he never used to communicate with anybody, except maybe his friends. But otherwise, I don't know. But I had a suspicion at the time that he had been taking drugs, whether he discontinued or not. But from his letters that he sent me from overseas, it seemed that he was way out. But when he came home, and then he didn't stay with us. He stayed with us a couple of months because we were moving down, and he got his own apartment.
Right. Well, he came back from the service in June of 1974.
Yeah.
And you moved to Florida in November of 74.
No, in February of 75.
And he moved out sometime around the end of 74.
He moved in November 74.
And that's when he moved to Barnes Avenue.
That's right.
And then thereafter he moved...
wait a second, was it Barnes Avenue?
So that was 5 or 6 months when David came home from the service. He came back home, of course. Nat was already remarried to Julia, so he lived with them for that period of time. Whether he was out all the time or what, they would get a good sense of his mental condition, at least what it was on the exterior.
Yeah, I think it was.
I have 3161 Barnes Avenue.
Yeah.
And then thereafter,
he moved to Yonkers.
He moved to
Mount
New
Vernon.
Rochelle.
New Rochelle, somewhere over
Right.
there.
Did you ever visit him at that New Rochelle area?
No.
Coligny Avenue.
No.
How about on Pine Street?
Huh?
Did you ever visit him at Pine Street?
No.
You know,
I was down here at the time.
One thing is very interesting, and maybe you could shed some light on it. I spoke to two of the boys who helped him move from your apartment to Barnes Avenue, and they mentioned that he had a lot of furniture. He had a bed and a bureau.
Where is that furniture?
That's right.
He got rid of everything.
Got rid of everything.
Everything, when he moved to Barnes Avenue, I helped him fix up and everything else.
Right.
And after that, I don't know. I found out afterwards that he had sold his hi-fi set.
Yeah, the guys told me he had a very expensive hi-fi set.
That's right.
That he brought home from Korea.
In fact, I took 2 speakers, which I have here from him. We had 4 speakers. Each one of those speakers sell for around $400.
I wondered if you had any idea whatever happened to that stuff.
He said he sold them. And I'm sure moving around like that, he got rid of his furniture because he didn't want too much to move.
Did he ever tell you why he was selling the
Never
stereo?
told me. Never told me anything.
Because he seemed to be very interested in it. His friend said that he was really good equipment and he really enjoyed it and he took very good care of it.
Evidently he needed the money. And he didn't want to take it from me.
Do you know whether he took any trips? Did he ever?
Only one trip. He came down here, and he went to Texas from here, and then he went to New York. He bought a gun in Texas.
Right, I heard that. Do you know whether he ever went to California?
Never went to California. Not as far as I know. Never went to California.
Let me ask you this. Did he ever talk to you about the Carr family?
The what?
The Carrs.
No. Never told me anything about the Carrs.
Because I know, I visited the Pine Street, and I know where the Carrs lived, and they're only about a block or so apart.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if he ever mentioned to you that he knew any of them.
No. Never mentioned it.
Do you think that he wrote all those letters?
I don't know. I'll tell you the truth. I don't know.
You know, especially the ones that were printed, the ones that they wrote to the newspaper and to the police department, the ones talking about John Wheaties. Do you think, does that sound like David?
It could be and it can't be. I can't possibly tell you.
Remember, those letters had David's prints, and yes, they were partial, they were minute, but they did have trace of his fingerprints on them. Whether he wrote them or not, we can't prove from that. We'll carry on.
Because I don't know if I have a load of letters from him, and I don't know if I have any that are printed. I don't think I have. I think they're all written.
Because we've never seen anything of his that looked like that.
Like the printed?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to go through all those letters way back. I don't think I may have and I may not. If that would help you, I'll go through it.
Would you look through it? Also, let me ask you this.
Can you send me a photostatic copy so I could, one of the letters so I can compare it?
Sure. What's your address down there?
No, send it to Mr. Rubin. I don't want my address.
Okay. Let me ask you this. I know that when David was in the service that he changed his religion to some extent. He became a newborn Christian.
Yeah. That was, I don't know whether it happened overseas, but I know it happened in where he's stationed at Fort Knox.
Uh-huh. Do you know whether he ever attended any of the church proceedings after he came up here?
Up here?
Yeah.
I don't know. Up here I know he didn't. I don't know. But down there I know he did.
Because I know down in when he was in the service, he apparently became a Baptist or a newborn Christian.
Yeah, he made a friend there and he became a Baptist. But he's reverted now. He is no longer considered that as a religion.
He's Jewish again.
Yeah. In fact, the Jewish chaplain goes to see him.
I see. But you don't know whether he belonged to any temple in the Bronx or in...
He never belonged to any temple.
How about...
Just a quick note. An old-fashioned Jewish family, the son, proclaiming that he's become a born-again Baptist, that's pretty big and maybe shameful in some Jewish families. So I'm sure that there was some hardship there with Nat and David. So just a quick note.
Any of these other, any Baptist organization or any newborn Christian organization up in New York?
I believe he had contact with this Jews for Jesus.
Do you know where in New York?
No, it was in New Jersey.
It was in New Jersey?
I think it was in Englewood.
In Englewood, New Jersey?
They used to send literature. And I was getting literature for him for a long time from somebody out in Long Island. A church, some church.
You don't have any of that material around or any addresses on that, do you?
No, I don't. Because I as soon as I got them, I threw them away. But it all had to do with Jews of Jesus.
What do you think could have made him do these things? Or don't you think he did them?
I think he did them.
You think he did?
I'm positive he did it. What if...
That is a strong statement. I think he did it. I'm positive he did it. This is his dad, adopted or not. This is the man who raised him. He's saying, if anything, you would think, you know, if he had any suspicion whatsoever that someone else was involved, he would want to exonerate his son. This is his stepdad, his adoptive dad saying, I think he did it. I'm positive. It's very strong. And by the way, I didn't mention before, but boy, I'd love to see the letters to Nat from David.
What caused him to do it, I don't know. It may be that when he was in the Army, he was the only Jew amongst the whole regiment.
I was too when I was in the Army.
Huh?
I was the only Jew also.
Yeah, but you were stronger willed than he was. So he was the only Jew, and people, they must have had an influence on him. And evidently that's what it was.
Did he ever mention any new friends that he'd made?
What?
Did he ever mention the names of any new friends that he'd made, either in New Rochelle or in Yonkers or in...
No, not there. He only made this one friend in the Army that he mentioned that lived in Texas.
That was the guy who brought him the gun?
That's right. Outside of that, he never mentioned anybody who he was friends with. And I used to ask him. But when he lived on Barnes Avenue already, he used to write me letters. He wrote me a letter. I haven't got it. That when he used to walk down the street, the girls and boys used to spit on him. Now, can you imagine anybody doing that?
No, I don't see why they would. Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't it?
Doesn't
That's
make sense.
why I say he was a very sick boy.
But you were still around until February '75.
Yeah, but this was after I moved. He wrote this.
Right, but before you moved down to Florida, he was in Barnes Avenue, and then he had moved to Coligny Avenue in New Rochelle. Did you see him periodically?
He used to come to the house when he lived on Barnes Avenue.
How about
when he moved to the other place? I was down here already.
Well, he moved to New Rochelle sometime around January, February of '75.
Well, that must have been right after I moved down here.
Oh, I see. How did he sound when he came to visit you when he was at Barnes?
Normal.
Well, no change in his personality.
No.
Let me ask you this.
In fact, everybody that knew him was surprised about this whole thing. Because he acted just like anybody else would.
Well, that's what all his friends say. They say that it wasn't David.
Yeah.
They say David was a different kind of kid.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean that. I mean what I meant by different, that evidently they noticed the change, that he wasn't friendly with them, that he used to go out by himself. That's evidently what they meant. But when we were together, it was like talking to you, and like I was talking to you.
Like your son was home.
Yeah. But evidently there was a change. He didn't want to have anything to do with them, or what. He pulled into himself more.
Let me ask you, did he like dogs?
Did he like dogs? We had a dog that he was crazy over. But, he never seemed to shun them. But I tell you what, it bothered him a lot all his life. Any little loud noise used to annoy him. If I used to speak to him and just a little above the natural tone voice, he used to put his hands to his ears. He couldn't stand loud noises.
misophonia. If you haven't seen my video on that, please check it out.
Was he a very emotional kid growing up? Did he cry easily if you yelled at him?
No, he was just the opposite. I wish he would have cried plenty of times, but he didn't. The only time I ever caught him crying is when my first wife died.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, he wasn't.
He wasn't a sensitive kid?
No.
And the only thing that you can recall that used to upset him was loud...
Yeah, loud noises.
I'm sure you've read things in the newspaper about automobiles. Tell me, did David have any friends who owned Volkswagens?
That I don't know.
Do you ever recall him either coming to visit you or coming with a friend who had a Volkswagen?
No. Never. I don't remember. In fact, I think, if I remember correctly, none of his friends had the friends that I knew never had a car. David was the first one, I think, that had a car.
Who was David's best friend? Besides yourself?
At what time?
When he was growing up.
He used to have people down in the building here. Down in our building, he had two brothers, but I forgot their names already.
Mm-hmm.
But after they moved away, he started hanging around with some people from school, and some of them I liked, some I didn't, but I couldn't interfere, but I don't remember their names. Then he had a friend by the name of John. I don't know their last name. He lived with his sister somewhere near us.
Mm-hmm.
He used to go to school with him.
He had
But
a friend.
outside of that...
He had a friend Lenny. Did you know his friend Lenny?
Oh, yeah, Lenny also was friends with him. Lenny seemed to be a nice person.
I had mentioned...
Make sure you listen to that video.
to Mr. Rubenstein that I knew that Julia had two children, Diane and another one.
Yeah.
And that the other child I had heard had committed suicide.
Yes.
Was that before this whole thing started?
Yes. Long time ago.
Long time ago.
Long time ago. I was still living in New York.
And it was before the whole thing started.
It must be about, let me think, 11, must be about 10 or 11 years ago.
How old a girl was she?
She was in, I think, late 20s.
And she was married and had children.
Huh?
She was married and had children.
Yes, two children.
Two children. That was Mrs. Lerner, right?
No, yeah, that was Mrs. Lerner.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what her first name. What was her first name?
Okay, I think this is pretty important point here. So obviously, Nat couldn't remember her name, Julia's daughter who committed suicide. So if he can't remember her name, it was very early in their marriage and relationship. It's highly probable that David had no relation with her, nor did maybe he never met her. But my point being, Nat's in a new marriage with Julia. One of her children commits suicide. This would take Nat's mind space to protecting and nurturing and giving his attention to Julia, so further taking attention away from David. He comes back from the service. His friends have all moved on. Some of them married, moved away. We've heard the stories. So he comes back. His friends are scattered. His dad moves to Florida. He's feeling alone, and this is just one other point that his father would be really using his energy supporting Julia through a horrific time like a suicide of a child.
Oh, crap. I'm trying to think. Isn't that funny? It's on the tip of my tongue.
Maybe her husband's name was Hal, right?
Yeah, Hal.
Hal and who? Sometimes it's by word association.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Hal and who? By word association.
Oh, crap. Let me see for a second. Hold it.
Okay.
For the life of me, I can't think of it.
Can't think of it.
No. For the life of me, I can't think of it. I didn't know it too long because right after I married the mother,
Mm-hmm.
she committed suicide. I can't think.
So you had plenty of service.
Yeah, that's why I try to stay out of this because I can't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's beyond me, and look, I'm not a youngster. I'm 69 years old, and I want to live the rest of life in peace.
I can understand. And as I said, what we're trying to do is put this thing either.
Okay, so that recording cuts off there. There is a second recording with the downloads that is about 3.5 minutes, maybe a little bit less, but I'm not going to play that for you. I'll just summarize it. Basically, Leifer is trying to get Nat's phone number so that he can deal directly with him. As I said earlier in the video, I really believe he was trying to build rapport, kind of make him feel good. Look, I might find out something that may help your son, because they really wanted to go see Berkowitz, and Nat might be able to navigate that and make that happen more smoothly. So the second piece, it's worth listening to. It's only a couple minutes, but he keeps referring back to his attorney, Rubenstein. So they need to do everything through the attorney, even call the attorney and say, please have Mr. Berkowitz call me. So that's pretty much that. And I think that my notes were really more for me based on things that I noticed or that I jotted down from Nat's interview. And you got a chance to listen to it with me. I don't think that there was a lot that I didn't pause on and state at the time. He got a lot of letters from the Army, from David. I'd really love to see those. He did talk about the stereo. Now, I know that there was a picture after the fact where David had a stereo. Is it possible that that was a different stereo? $400 a speaker back then, that's huge. So is it possible that that receiver he had that was on the chair in that picture that most of you have seen, was that a different one, or was that the hi-fi, as he called it? I also love the term photostatic copies. I once said Xerox to someone, can I get a Xerox? And they're like, you old girl. All right. Well, I'm thinking that that's about it here, guys. I enjoyed listening to that with you. As you know, this is premiere, so I'm in the chat with you right now. But I wanted to get it done beforehand so that I didn't have any tech issues with live, and that I would be able to communicate with you in chat. So hope you enjoyed listening to that short audio tape with me. If there's another one that you want to listen to, leave it in the comments. Of course, I've listened to most of them already, and I will be re-listening. I will definitely do something on wheat, on the Carr family, and then probably a compilation. There's a few videos of friends that are a little shorter where Leifer just had notes. So I may do one video compiling those. It depends. It depends on how much notes that I actually take from those. And I don't like to do very, very long videos. I think people kind of lose it. You get certain information you have to be able to digest and kind of put it in with your thoughts and your theories and then run from there. So sometimes information overload really isn't a great thing. So keep listening to the audio tapes. I hope that you are getting a lot out of them. Again, thank you to the person who brought them out to the community. Way to go. Huge find. And I look forward to the next few weeks and months to see what people bring to the table, people in the local community. And I'm going to sign off now. All right. Guys, have a great day. Bye-bye.